It's 3:12 in the morning. I'm sitting on the floor of my room, lights off, phone face down, and I wasn't supposed to be awake right now. But something pulled me out of sleep. Not a sound, not a nightmare. Something quieter than that, like a weight pressing gently on my chest. The kind you feel when something is important, when something is being said to you, and you're the only one in the room. I know how this sounds. I really do. But I need you to stay with me for just a few minutes. Because I genuinely believe that you are watching this for a reason. If you stumbled onto this video tonight, if something in you said, play this one when you could have scrolled past, that's not random. I don't believe in accidents. Not anymore. Because the message I'm about to share, it didn't come from a news headline, didn't come from a geopolitical analyst. It came during prayer, in the silence, when I laid everything down and just listened. And what came back changed the way I see this world. I was praying over what's happening in the world, not in a formal way, not with a structured list of requests, just sitting, eyes closed, hands open. The kind of prayer where you stop asking for things and you just become still enough to receive something. I had been carrying a weight for weeks, the kind of weight you can't fully explain to someone else. A low, persistent hum of unease, like when the sky changes color before a storm and the birds go quiet, and your body knows something is coming before your mind catches up. I had been watching the news, reading, listening, and the more I absorbed, the more I felt this growing sense that we are standing at the edge of something enormous, something that most people are not taking seriously enough, not because they're foolish, but because it's so much easier to believe that the systems around us are stronger than they actually are. So I prayed, and at some point in that stillness, I stopped thinking in words, and I saw something in my spirit, clear and quiet and unmistakable. I saw water, not crashing, not violent, just moving, slow and deliberate and heavy with purpose. Dark water, the kind that carries weight even in its silence. And above it, the sky was that deep blue you only see before sunrise, not black anymore, but not quite light. That in-between hour, that threshold hour. And on that water ships, massive, almost incomprehensibly massive. I'm not someone who spends time thinking about shipping lanes or oil tankers. This was not something I had been studying. But in this moment, I could feel the weight of those ships. I could sense what they carried, not just cargo, but consequence. The heat in millions of homes, the fuel in ambulances rushing through cities I will never visit, the power behind factories and hospitals and airports, and the quiet hum of electricity that people all over the world fall asleep trusting will simply be there when they wake up. And all of it moving through this narrow throat of water, 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. I want you to stop for a second and actually feel that number. 21 miles. You could drive that in less than half an hour. You could run that distance on a clear day if you train for it. And through that thin gap, through that almost absurdly fragile corridor of water wedged between coastlines, a fifth of the world's oil moves every single day. Every single day. Tankers lined up like a slow procession, carrying the lifeblood of the global economy through a space so narrow that the nations on either side can practically see each other across the water. The Strait of Hormuz. I didn't choose to think about it. It came to me. And as I sat in that vision watching those ships move, I became aware of something I can only describe as atmosphere. Not the weather, but the spiritual atmosphere around that place. It was tense. Not chaotic, not burning, but tense the way a rope gets. Tense when too much weight is pulling on both ends. The kind of tension that doesn't announce itself loudly. It just holds and holds and holds. And somewhere in the quiet of that image, I became aware of how many people in the world have no idea this place exists. No idea that right now, in this very moment, somewhere on that narrow blue corridor, a tanker is moving slowly under a pre-dawn sky, carrying enough fuel to power a city, and the entire geopolitical balance of a region is coiled around it like a spring. That's not a metaphor. That is the actual reality of our world. And I felt something break open in me, not fear, not panic, something more like grief. The grief that comes when you finally see how fragile something is that you had assumed was permanent. I thought about the people in cold climates who will turn their heat on tonight without a second thought. The pilots trusting the fuel in their aircraft to carry 300 strangers safely across an ocean. The doctors in intensive care units whose machines run on power grids that run on fuel that came through a passage most of them have never heard of. All of them trusting. All of them depending. All of them completely unaware of how thin the thread is. And then in the middle of that vision, everything went still, stiller than before. The ships didn't stop, the water didn't stop, but something shifted in the quality of the silence. The way a room goes quiet when someone important enters, and I heard something not audible, not the way you hear a voice across a room, but internal, deep, the kind of knowing that arrives whole all at once, like a stone dropping into still water. This is what a fragile world looks like when it trusts anything other than me. I stayed with that for a long time. I didn't rush past it. I didn't immediately start drawing conclusions or thinking about what I was going to do with it. I just let it sit on me. Because sometimes a truth comes and it doesn't need you to do anything with it immediately. It just needs you to hold it, to let it settle into the places in you that need settling. And what settled in me was this: we are not watching a geopolitical crisis. We are not watching an energy problem or a trade dispute or a regional conflict. We are watching a mirror held up to a civilization that has spent generations building elaborate, intricate, breathtakingly sophisticated systems of provision and then bowed to those systems as though they were eternal. We built the tankers. We mapped the shipping lanes. We negotiated the treaties. We constructed the pipelines and the refineries and the distribution networks. We connected the entire modern world into one vast circulatory system. And it is extraordinary. It genuinely is. But we forgot one thing. We forgot that the whole magnificent structure rests on 21 miles of water. We forgot that one decision made by one nation on one morning in one moment of desperation or aggression or fear could close that passage, could stop those ships, could send the price of everything rippling outward like a shock wave through every city on earth within days, within hours. And most people are living as if that is not possible, as if the lights will always come on, as if the shelves will always be full, as if the systems will always hold. And I sat there on the floor at 3 a.m. and I thought about all the different versions of this same pattern in human history. Every great civilization that built something magnificent, every empire that believed its structures were permanent, every generation that inherited a world so stable it felt eternal until the day it didn't. And then I thought about something more personal. I thought about how I do this, how I build my own little systems of security, my own narrow straits through which everything I depend on must pass: my health, my income, my relationships, my plans, and how quietly terrifying it is to realize that every single one of those things is, in its own way, 21 miles wide, narrow, passable, but not guaranteed, not mine to control, not permanent. And I sat in that fear for a moment. I didn't push it away. I let myself feel it, the smallness of it, the smallness of me, sitting on the floor in the dark while the world kept spinning and all its tankers kept moving through all their narrow passages, and not one of them was under my authority. And then slowly something else moved in, not the absence of the fear, but something bigger than it. The same way dawn doesn't erase the darkness, it just becomes greater than it. And in that greater thing, I found the beginning of the message I knew I had to share, because this is not a story about oil. This is not a story about geopolitics or military strategy. This is a story about where you place your weight, about what you build on, about the quiet, daily, almost invisible act of choosing whether you trust the systems of this world to hold you or whether you trust the one who holds the systems. The ships are still moving as you watch this. The water is still there, that thin ribbon of dark blue at the edge of 2 continents. And the question being asked not by me, but through all of it, is the oldest question. The one every generation has had to answer in their own way. When it shakes, and it will shake, what will you be standing on? We have built something extraordinary as a civilization. I want to start there with that acknowledgement Because I think sometimes in spiritual spaces we rush too quickly to the critique without first standing in honest awe of what human hands and human minds have actually accomplished. The infrastructure of the modern world is staggering. Cables on the ocean floor carrying the internet across continents. Satellites orbiting silently overhead, syncing the clocks on your phone to the millisecond. Supply chains so precisely calibrated that a part manufactured in one country is installed in a machine in another country within 48 hours. Hospitals that can restart a human heart. Planes that cross oceans in the dark while everyone on board sleeps. We built this, people built this, and there is something genuinely magnificent about it. But here is what I have been sitting with. Here is the thing that has been pressing on me since that night on the floor, since that vision of the ships and the water and the narrow passage through which the world's survival quietly moves. We did not just build systems. We began to worship them, not in the way you worship in a sanctuary, not with candles or hymns or lifted hands, but with something deeper than all of that, with our trust, with our daily, unconscious, total reliance, with the part of us that was designed to rest in something eternal and instead laid itself down inside something made of metal and contract and geopolitical agreement and quarterly earnings reports. And that is where the fracture begins, not in the systems themselves. The systems are not the villain of this story. Oil moves, trade flows, economies function. These are not evil things. The fracture begins in the moment we stop seeing them as tools and start seeing them as foundations. The moment we stop asking what sustains this and simply assume deeply, instinctively, without examination that it will always be here, that the lights will come on, that the shelves will be stocked, that the structures will hold, that the passage will stay open. That assumption, that quiet, unexamined, almost invisible assumption, that is where we are most exposed. Because I want to tell you what I have seen not in visions but in the patterns of ordinary life. I have watched people pour everything they have into a career, not just their time and their effort, but their identity, their sense of worth, the deep private place in them that needs to know they are enough. They build around that career like it is a fortress. And for years, maybe decades, it holds, it provides, it confirms them. And then one morning, a restructure, a diagnosis, a market shift, a single conversation with a manager that changes everything. And the fortress does not just crack, it collapses, because it was never a fortress. It was a sophisticated illusion of one. And the person inside it is not just unemployed, they are lost, because they had placed the full weight of their identity on something that was never built to hold it. I have watched relationships do the same thing. Someone finds love, real love, or what feels like it, and they build their entire emotional architecture around that person. That relationship becomes the narrow passage through which all their peace must flow, all their sense of safety, all their hope for the future. Everything travels through that one connection. And when it fractures, and sometimes it fractures because human beings are not God, and no human being can bear the weight of being someone else's entire world, the devastation is not proportional to the loss of a relationship. It is proportional to the collapse of a world, because that is what it was. It was their world, and they built it on 21 miles of water. I have watched people do this with their health, with their financial security, with their children's success, with political movements and charismatic leaders and national identities and ideologies that always promised to be the thing that finally made everything make sense. And again, not always, but with a consistency that should make us stop and pay attention. Again and again, the thing cracks, the health changes, the savings erode, the children take their own path, the leader disappoints, the movement fractures, the ideology meets its limit, and the people who poured everything into those things are left standing in the rubble, asking the same stunned question every generation has asked before them. How did this happen? How did something so solid become so suddenly, so completely, so devastatingly fragile? And I want to be tender here, because I am not standing above this. I am not pointing down at human weakness from some elevated position of spiritual clarity. I do this. I have done this. I still catch myself doing this. The pull toward visible, tangible, manageable security is not a character flaw. It is part of what it means to be human, We were made for a world we could touch. We were given bodies that need food and warmth and shelter. We were wired for relationship, for community, for the comfort of being held. The desire for security is not the problem. The object of that security is everything. There is a line in the Psalms Ancient, almost embarrassingly simple, that says, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." Chariots and horses were the peak military technology of their age. The most advanced, most powerful, most reliable instruments of national security available. And the person writing those words was not naive. He was not unaware of how formidable they were. He was simply saying, I have seen what chariots do when they are all you have, and I have decided to anchor somewhere else. 2,000 years later, we have different chariots. We have aircraft carriers and nuclear deterrence and satellite intelligence and algorithmic trading systems and reserve currencies and international coalitions and straits through which a fifth of the world's oil flows every single day. And the same ancient question sits quietly underneath all of it. What are you trusting? Not intellectually, not theologically, not the answer you would give in a small group or write in a journal. What are you actually functionally daily trusting? Because here's the thing about functional trust. It reveals itself not in your best moments, but in your worst ones. You do not discover what you are truly resting on when everything is fine. You discover it when the call comes, when the results come back, when the account runs dry, when the person leaves, when the thing you built begins to shake. What do you reach for in that moment? Where does your mind go in the first 30 seconds after the ground shifts? That is your real answer, and I am not asking that to produce shame. Shame is not the point. Shame paralyzes. And this moment, the moment we are in, the moment this world is in, does not need paralyzed people. It needs awakened ones. People who have looked honestly at what they were resting on, who felt the vertigo of realizing how thin the thread was, and who made a different choice. Not a religious choice, not a cultural or tribal or inherited choice, a real one, deliberate, personal, made from the inside out, a choice to build on something that has never, not once in the entire history of human experience, collapsed under the weight of the people who trusted it completely. I have read the accounts. I have sat with the stories. I have looked at the lives of people who had everything taken: health, freedom, family, future, and who emerged from the rubble not destroyed, but strangely, inexplicably, almost offensively intact. Not because they were strong, because what they were standing on was, and here is the contrast I need you to hold. The systems of this world are not evil, but they are finite. They were built by finite hands, sustained by finite agreements, dependent on finite resources, moving through finite passages of water. They can be interrupted. They have been interrupted. History is littered with the ruins of systems that people were absolutely certain would never fail. But there is a foundation, not metaphorical, not abstract, not a comforting idea for difficult seasons, a real, load-bearing, historically tested, personally available foundation that has absorbed every earthquake thrown at it and has not moved. Not because the people standing on it were special, but because the foundation itself is, that is what is on offer here, not the promise that the systems won't shake. They will. Not the promise that the passage stays open. It may not the promise that the world stays stable, or the economy holds, or the leaders make wise decisions, or the chariots are enough. The promise is simpler than all of that, and it is more durable than all of that. I will not be moved, not the world, not the systems, not the straight eye, the one who made the water, the one who set the boundaries of the sea, the one who breathed life into the first human, and has been present for every civilization that rose and every civilization that fell. That one, still here, still holding, still offering the same thing he has always offered to anyone willing to stop trusting their chariots long enough to reach for something real. Come, build here. Not where the tankers move, not where the markets close, not where the agreements hold or break. Build here on what lasts. I want to ask you something, and I need you to actually stop for a moment before I ask it, not pause the video, not reach for your phone, not let your mind drift to whatever is waiting for you after this. Just stop right here, right now, because what I am about to ask is not a rhetorical question. It is not a device to keep you engaged. It is not something I want you to answer quickly and move past. It is the question, the one underneath everything else, the one that has been sitting quietly beneath every word I have said tonight. What are you resting your peace on right now? Not your theology, not your tradition, not the belief system you were raised in or the one you chose as an adult. I mean, right now, this week, this season of your life, when you wake up at 2 a.m. and the room is dark and quiet and there is nothing to distract you from yourself, where does your mind go? When the news comes on and something tightens in your chest, what do you reach for? When the uncertainty of this world presses in close, and it is pressing in close, we all feel it, even the ones who pretend not to when it gets that close. What is the thing underneath you that you are trusting to hold? Because I have been watching people for a long time now, and what I have noticed is this. Most of us have two answers to that question. The answer we give out loud, and the answer our bodies give in the dark. The answer we give out loud sounds settled, sounds grounded, sounds like someone who has thought carefully about what they believe and where they stand, and then the ground shifts even slightly, even just a tremor, not the full earthquake, just the tremor, just a concerning headline, just an unexpected bill, just a doctor's office visit that ends with the words, "We need to run more tests." And the answer our bodies give in that moment, the one that bypasses all our careful theology and goes straight to the gut, that answer tells a different story. And I am not saying that to condemn you. I am saying it because I know it. I live it. I have sat with that gap between what I believe, and what my fear reveals I actually believe. And it is one of the most uncomfortable, most honest, most necessary spaces a person can occupy, because you cannot close a gap you refuse to see. And right now, in this moment in history, in this trembling, accelerating, beautiful, and terrifying world, the gap is being revealed. Not punished. Revealed. There is a difference. Punishment says you did something wrong and now you will suffer for it. Revelation says here is what is true and you need to see it clearly, because what comes next will require you to be standing on something real. The world is shaking. You know this. You feel this even when you cannot articulate it. There is something in the atmosphere of this era, in the pace of change, in the fragility of the systems we have trusted, in the way certainties we once took for granted are quietly, persistently dissolving. There is something that keeps pressing on the deep places in people and asking the question they keep trying not to answer. Is what I am standing on enough? And I want to tell you something I have had to tell myself. Numbness is not peace. Distraction is not rest. Keeping busy enough that the question never quite surfaces that is not faith. That is avoidance dressed in productivity. And it works. It works remarkably well until it doesn't, until the night comes when the distractions run out and the silence arrives, and there you are, face to face with the version of yourself that has been quietly terrified for months, maybe years, waiting for you to slow down long enough to have an honest conversation. And that version of you is not your enemy. That is the part of you that is closest to the truth. That is the part that knows the tankers are fragile and the systems are thin and the world is 21 miles from disruption at any given moment. And that part of you is not asking to be silenced. It is asking to be anchored. There is a difference between a person who is not afraid because they have never looked honestly at the fragility of this world, and a person who has looked, who has seen it fully, who has sat with the vertigo of how thin everything is, and who has chosen from that place of clear-eyed honesty to anchor in something the fragility cannot touch. The first person is not brave. They are just uninformed. The second person, that person is something rare, something this moment desperately needs. And I want to ask you gently but directly, which one are you? Have you actually looked? Have you allowed yourself to feel the weight of what is at stake in this world right now? Not just globally, not just geopolitically, but personally, in your own life, in your own chest, in the places you do not talk about in public. Have you stood in that feeling without immediately reaching for something to make it go away? Because if you have, if you are sitting with that right now, Even as you watch this, then you are closer than you think, not to despair, to the thing on the other side of despair, the surrender that is not defeat, the letting go that is not loss. The moment when you stop white-knuckling the systems and the plans and the illusions of control, and you open your hands and you say, I cannot hold this. I was never meant to hold this. And I am done pretending I can. That moment, that is not weakness. That is the bravest thing a human being can do. And it is available to you right now, not at the end of some long spiritual process, not after you have cleaned yourself up or figured everything out or resolved all your doubts. Right now, in exactly the condition you are in, with every question still unanswered and every fear still present and every system around you still trembling. Right now you can choose what you stand on. And that choice, that single, quiet, personal, unwitnessed choice is more significant than anything happening in any strait, on any tanker, in any government, in any market on earth, because those things shape the world around you. But this choice shapes the world within you. And the world within you is where everything that matters actually lives. So I am asking again, and this time I want you to let it land. Where do you stand? Not where do you want to stand. Not where you used to stand. Not where you tell people you stand. Right now, tonight, in this moment, where do you actually stand? And are you ready not for a world without trouble, because that world is not on offer, but are you ready for trouble that cannot move you? Are you ready for a shaking that does not take you down? Because that is what is available. That is what has always been available. And the only thing standing between you and it is the decision to stop, trusting your 21 miles of water and build on something the water cannot swallow. If this reached you tonight, if something in these words pressed on a part of your heart that needed pressing, I want you to do something simple. Just type 2 words in the comments. I'm ready, not because it's a performance, not because the algorithm needs it, but as an act, a declaration between you and the one who is listening. And if you want to stay in this space where we slow down and go deeper and ask the harder questions together, then stay, subscribe, let's keep walking. There's more to say, and I believe you need to hear it. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide, and the whole world holds its breath around it. But there is a peace, the scriptures say, that passes all understanding, not the peace that comes when everything is stable, the peace that remains when nothing is. That's what's available to you right now, in this moment, in this fragile, trembling, beautiful world. Don't waste it on fear. Go in peace.